this sermon is about this time counts. And raise your hand, or don't raise your hand, but is anybody in the room kind of sitting in something where you've been waiting and you're just tired of waiting? In the Methodist Church, we call that the itinerant system, when you know you're moving for a while and then you're just going to wait. So we know what waiting is like. This sermon today is geared towards helping some of those who may be in the waiting right now, who may be in the not yet moment. And so this time counts. The temptation is to believe if we're in the waiting and we're not there yet, then it doesn't matter. But God moves most powerfully in the waiting. God moves most amazingly in the not yet. And so I hope that you'll hear that. A little housekeeping real quick. I want to say thank you to my brother, the Reverend Rodney Porter, who's here in the red shirt. He is a retired United Methodist preacher, retired for 5 weeks at this point. And so he is with us today. Thank you for coming up, Rodney. I'm going to start off by talking now about my brother, Drew. He died a couple of years ago, cancer, and he was 5 years older than me, 2 years younger than Rodney, 3 years younger than Rodney, and then 5 years younger than our oldest brother, Jim, and then I'm 3 years older than our youngest brother, Heath, so Drew was 7 years older than him. Everybody get the math on that? But Drew was 5 years older than me, the one just over than me, but he's 5 years older than me, and so he was always bigger and, but I've always been kind of spunky and always believed in myself, so I would challenge him at sports no matter what, and so we would be in the backyard playing baseball or basketball or whatever, and I don't know what it is about younger brothers, but I would do this. I would say, hey, Drew, if I make this shot, you got to do my homework for a week. You got to do my chores for a week. And then he'd go, yeah, whatever, because I'm that aggravating younger brother that he just wants to get rid of. And he'd say, whatever. And so I would take the shot, and the first one, it was sweet. I mean, it was pretty. I didn't quite bend the knees enough, and it rimmed out. And you're the younger brother. It's your job to be aggravating. And so I said, hold on, double or nothing. Double or nothing. If I hit this one, then you got to do my chores for 2 weeks, and I'll do your homework for 2 weeks. Now, did you catch that he's 5 years older than me, and I'm saying I'll do his homework? And he would just roll his eyes and go, whatever. And then I took that shot. I bent the knees, got it up in the air, and it rimmed out. But every time I would do it, I would say, this time it counts. I would miss and go, but this time it counts, acting like the one that I just shot didn't count. How many times in our lives are we sitting there with this thinking, this time it's going to count. This time it's going to matter. This time I'm going to get it right. This time Moses understood this conversation about this time. He's born a Hebrew, adopted into Pharaoh's house by Pharaoh's daughter. You remember him in the basket in the river. He grows up and realizes as he's becoming a young adult that he's actually a Hebrew and he's not really from Pharaoh's house. He's not really from Pharaoh's home. And he breaks the law. We won't get into what he did there, but you know what he did. He breaks the law and he has to go into hiding. And he goes into hiding and he goes into backwater Egypt, backwater Israel. He goes into the way away. And for 40 years, we don't talk about these 40 years near enough. For 40 years, he's in hiding tending sheep. For 40 years, he is out wondering and waiting. Is this all there is? For 40 years, Moses has a new family and he's got a new home. But for 40 years, he's wondering, is this all that there is? And then after 40 years, God shows up and says, now it's time for you to leave shepherding my people. And now it's time for you to come shepherd people and leave shepherding sheep. And so we see Moses, and he's out for a walk with the sheep, and the fire begins to talk. You remember? That fire, that bush is on fire, and then it begins to talk and not burn up. And God begins to speak to him and says, now it's your time. But don't miss, for 80 years, For 80 years, 2 40-year blocks, Moses goes from this responsibility to this responsibility. For 40 years, standing in the middle of nowhere, wondering, do I still count? Do I matter? God, what did you save me for? God, what was my time in Pharaoh's palace? What was my time in this place? What was it? What was that for? And then he calls and says, Moses, set my people free. Moses, go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go. And so Moses at this point in these 40 years says, this time it counts. This time, these 40 years, it's going to matter. He doesn't get everything right. He doesn't get everything perfect, but he's in this season and he's in this place. And when he gets those people and he sets those people free, he gets them out of Egypt, he gets them out of bondage, and they get out, everything goes perfect, right? Everything goes great, right? No. As a matter of fact, they come to Moses and say, now, remember when we were in Egypt and remember when we lived in Egypt, everything was better than it is now. They said to Moses, when we were back there, even though we were slaves, even though we were in bondage, at least we knew where our meal was going to come from. And so Moses, after 40 years of being a shepherd and now 40 years of shepherding people into this wilderness, is now standing there in this place, now standing there in the midst of all this is going on, and he's going, does this time count? Because God, I've done what you asked me to do, and I've done exactly how you've asked me to do it. Well, maybe not exactly ask you how you asked me to do it, but I've done it, and now the people are just driving me crazy. See, what Moses is learning here is very quickly we forget. Very quickly we get busy. Very quickly we find ourselves forgetting just how good God is. Very quickly we find ourselves losing step and losing places and continually trying to grasp and reach and find and hold. When Moses is standing in the midst of the people in the wilderness, and I'm going through this really quick. When Moses is standing in the midst of the people in the wilderness, he's standing there and realizing, I'm still shepherding. And does this time count? How many times have you found yourself struggling and wondering and lost and in pain and in anguish and going, all right, God, where are you? All right, God, does this really matter? All right, God, when are you gonna help me? What I want you to hear in these next few minutes is where to go in that moment. What I want you to hear in that moment is how to move into that context that Moses has got when it comes to time management, when it becomes to recognizing the need to get right with God now. I believe that Moses does offer us a word on how to better structure our days and moments when we find ourselves in that chaos. That Moses does offer us a word on how to structure our time and how to experience our time that gives us better steps with God. And ironically, it's not in the first 5 books of the Old Testament, but it's in the one psalm that he wrote, Psalm 90. And he says it like this in verse 12. Moses says, so teach us to count our days that we may gain a wise heart. Teach us to count our days so that we may gain a wise heart. Anytime the scripture says teach us, it means that there is something we can't gain on our own. So if you're a note taker, this is a good place to write a note. Anytime the scripture says teach us, it means this is something that doesn't come natural. This is something that's not naturally or inherently understood. So Moses is saying, teach us. Now remember, 40 years as a shepherd of sheep in backwater Israel, 40 years now in the midst of 40 years of shepherding people, which is like shepherding cats at that point for him. Teach us to count our days that we may gain a wise heart. We don't naturally know how to count our days. We know how to fill our days. Amen? We know how to fill a calendar. We know how to make sure that we get things done. We know how to make sure that we knock out a list. We know how to make sure that we can fill a vacation. We know how to make sure that we can fill a work day. But to count our days is not something that's naturally a part of us. And we can't get there on our own. So let me give you a couple of examples. We've tried to stop gossiping on our own. Don't look at each other. Keep looking at me on this one. Spouses, do not look at one another on this part. Stay with me. We tried to stop gossiping on our own, and it didn't work. We tried really, really hard to not be so judgmental on our own, and we couldn't get there. Maybe we've tried to quit smoking, and we couldn't get there. We tried to quit speaking rough to our spouses. Stay with me, guys. Stay with me. We tried to quit speaking rough to our spouses and to our children, but we couldn't get it done. If I've got your attention yet, now hear the words of Moses again. Lord, teach me to count our days. One of the books that I've been reading for a couple months is called The Science of Scaling. Anybody heard that book, read that book, The Science of Scaling? One of the quotes is Sir Percy Buck. He was a prominent professor of music at the University of London in the 40s, and he wrote Psychology for Musicians, and it says, an amateur practices until he can do a thing right. An amateur practices until he can do a thing right. A professional practices until he can't do it wrong. This is what it means to count our days. This is what it means to measure our steps. That we're not just trying to do something to learn something so that we won't mess it up anymore. We're trying to do something until we can get it absolutely right and can't do it wrong. When Jesus uses these words, when Jesus teaches this, turn the other cheek, when Jesus uses this, love your enemies, when Jesus says, if one eye lusts, get rid of it. This is that professional conversation. It's not about just getting it right in the moment. It's about having a heart that can't get it wrong. It's about loving in a way that Christ loves. It's about loving in a way that transforms and changes the world. So instead of trying to say, I'm going to get these bad things out of my life, Jesus says, bring this good thing in. Instead of trying to figure out how to quit the bad habits, turn to Christ, turn to God and say, I'm going to be all in and I'm going to have Christ consume and control me. The book also talks about Garnet Morris. Anybody know the name Garnet Morris? He's huge in the Canadian life insurance company, and he does more business in his company by a factor of 10 than any other insurance business. And he says 4 rules of what happens. There's 4 rules, there's 4 truths that keep people from being able to measure their steps. And the first one is we lie to ourselves about our own performance. We lie to ourselves about what I'm doing. We say things like, well, I know I did that wrong, but I've got a good heart. You know, one of the first steps as a Christian is admitting, I don't always have a good heart. I don't always get everything right. As a matter of fact, there's some times that I'm just downright petty. There's some times that I'm just downright wrong. Garnet says that the very first rule that keeps people from being able to raise their floor is that they lie to themselves about their own performance. The second thing is they lie to themselves about the consequences of their actions. They lie about the consequences of their actions. Well, I know I did this wrong thing, but it didn't hurt anybody. I know I did this thing. I know I was selfish. I know I probably took more than I should have, but I didn't hurt anybody. When we do hard things, when we do bad things, we hurt people. And it makes it easier for us. I mean, have I started to preach yet? I mean, are we getting uncomfortable? I just want to. When we do things that hurt people, we hurt people. And the natural tendency is to pull ourselves back and go, yeah, but I didn't really hurt people. It wasn't as bad as anybody thinks. And everybody's okay. And I'm a good person. So the first 2 is that we lie to ourselves about what we're doing, and we lie about the consequences of the actions, and then we lie to ourselves about our trajectory. And I think this is the one that really hurts. We lie to ourselves about where we're going in our lives. I can't tell you over 25 years the number of dads that I have sat in counseling with who've told me about their careers, who've told me about their business, who've told me about their golf game, who've told me about their trips, who've told me about their stuff, and then in the midst of it going, I just don't know why me and my son don't get along. Well, it's because you've told your son what's important, and it's not them. We lie to ourselves about our trajectory. We lie to ourselves about where we're going, when the truth of the matter is our daily habits dictate where we're going. You know what I love? Top 5 in the world, of the world, fried chicken. I love good fried chicken. If you're ever from the LaGrange area in central Georgia, Big Chick is about as good as it gets. You know what's really bad for me? Fried chicken. I don't struggle with drugs, except for allopurinol, colchicine, which are the drugs that help me manage fried chicken. And I had a kidney stone the size of a quarter because I lied to myself for a long time about, I got this under control. I mean, I could have just said, well, that wasn't because of anything that I was doing. It was just, my genetics. But that would have been a lie. There are things that are happening in your life right now that you're pushing off to the side and saying, well, that's really not, and it's shaping the trajectory of not just today, but tomorrow. And this happens individually, it happens in families, it happens in businesses, it happens in governments, it happens every day. And the last one is this: they justify not being accountable to themselves or others. You know the phrase, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. Let me ask you, and don't raise your hand on this, just between you and God, do you have an accountability group? Do you have people in your life that can sit down with you and go, what are you thinking? Do you have a Sunday school class? Do you have a discipleship group? Do you have people that you're surrounded with that are talking to you and saying, man, you really messed that up. Ooh, you really, ooh. And do you care enough about your friends? Do you care enough about your partner? Do you care enough about your spouse? Do you care enough about your kids to have a relationship where you're saying, Because church life is not just about all of the good stuff. Church life is about accountability and coming alongside one another and saying, I see what you're going through, and if you take these steps and you help and you ask God to help measure and count your steps, you can have so much more. You know the story of Jacob and Esau? Jacob and Esau is about this. Jacob is wanting the inheritance. Jacob is wanting what his brother Esau has. And he says to Esau, if you'll give me the inheritance, if you'll give me what is yours, if you'll give me what I want, I'll give you this little bit of soup. I'll give you this stew, this pottage. And what does Esau say? Sure. Okay. And Esau gives him this inheritance, this great gift for this little bit of pottage. Brothers and sisters, please hear this pastorally. Many of us have traded in the great steps, the great gifts, the great loves, and the great life that God has in store for us because we've traded it in for a little bit of pottage. We are Esau. Hear me in this. It's C.S. Lewis saying, we're continuing to play in mud puddles with the great ocean out just a little bit further. This great gift of life and love and hope and relationships, it's right there for us. If we turn to God and say, God, teach us to count our days. We often end up with that mess of pottage because our floor is too low because of the lies that we tell ourselves. So somebody may ask you, how did Derek decide to end our summer? He's in week 3, the summer's almost over. How did he decide to end it? You can tell him this and say it clearly. He decided to remind us that we're all going to die one day. You've been to the doctor. You know it's the greatest fear. I remember looking at Jen as I was really dealing with some health stuff that the kidney stone developed into that we really haven't talked about, and watching her face and recognizing, I've got to make some changes because I can't do this to her. We sit in that office and we sit and we listen to those doctors who, by the way, seem to get younger every time I go to the doctor. And they say, if you don't make these changes, you're going to have this much time left. According to this prayer of Moses, numbering our days, it's a good thing. It's always fun for me in February and March to see teachers because they can tell you how many days are left in the school year. Now, the truth of the matter is they can tell you in September and October, but they can't publicly admit it at that point. I'm doing a wedding in April, next April. Is there any doubt that the bride knows how many days right now there are until that wedding? Our son Shane got married almost 2 years ago, and Sabrina, our daughter-in-law, could tell you the days, could tell you the weeks, could tell you the hours, could tell you every little bit and every little piece. Can I tell you that there are ministry, there is life that is just as important, that when we are focused, when we are dialed in to making sure that people are loved and cared for, that people are fed, that we have that same passion, that same energy. Now, I have a cousin who got married in 1997. Rodney's going to know I'm talking about, 1995. Rodney's going to know I'm talking about right away. And he got married. He called and said, I'm getting married on this day in October. Don't get married during the college football season. Don't do it. But he did it. And it was the day of Georgia, Tennessee. Georgia, Tennessee, 1995. Otherwise known as the Peyton Manning years in Georgia, and not great. And we went to the wedding, got done with the wedding, and went and found a TV. Went and found a TV. It was great until we lost. And then, a couple years ago, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I get a phone call from him say, hey, Derek, I'm getting married again. I want you to be there. My cousin, my favorite cousin. He goes, I'm getting married again. I want you to be there. I said, when you get married? He got married on Georgia, Tennessee again. And I said his name. I'm not going to say his name here. That's not fair. I said, how about I just make the next one? There's sometimes that you just know. There are sometimes that you find yourself going, I'm not doing that. No, the word no is a complete sentence. Now, that was being funny. I was at the wedding, so take a deep breath. I went to the wedding. But there are times that the reason that we're sitting with that mess of pottage in front of us is because we don't understand that the word no is a complete sentence. You can say the word no. The wisdom in counting our days is figuring out when to say no and what to say no to. The amount of pressure that's on families to have that perfect Disney vacation is through the roof. And it is extremely expensive. I'm not judging Disney. I'm just telling you, you live in that pressure. The amount of pressure that's placed on AAU families in basketball and baseball and sports is through the roof today. And my generation and the generation of my kids don't even understand the pressure it is. The pressure when kids get into middle school and high school to make sure that they're making the grade to get that scholarship, to get to that thing, is incredibly high. The ability to say the word no, the ability to learn the wisdom and what to say no to is incredibly important. Speaking of counting, when the summer started, there were kids that had 133 books to read this summer, these summer reading lists. And there are some kids who still have 132.5 books to read right now, unless your kid's one of those who finishes that list in early June. We understand numbered days and the clarity and the focus that occurs when we number our days. Moses is in the wilderness dealing with people saying, God, help us focus. Moses is standing in the middle of people who continue to lose focus, who continue to want to be petty, who continue to want leverage, who continue to want power, people who want influence, people who want chaos. And Moses says, God, please help us out. Help us number our days so that we have a heart of wisdom. Now, it's not a heart of love. Don't miss that. It's not a heart of kindness. It's a heart of wisdom. And that means that wisdom lives here and being able to discern and being able to understand, helping us now think on a higher and clearer plane. when you go to this text and you read this psalm and you understand the context of where he's at, he's actually begging God, God, help me help these people understand how to count their days. Let's do this, and then I'll get one more, and then we're done. Let's everybody hold our breath. For the next 4 minutes, let's just sit here and hold our breath. Exactly. There's no way you would do that. You'd go, whatever. And yet, you've got people in your life who are able to control your time, control your calendar, control everything in your part with just an email or a phone call because of pressure. Hear your pastor say, the word no is a complete sentence. Hear your pastor say, the very first thing that you can do as you get ready to have the best year ever is learn to count and measure your steps. 936. 936. So what is 936? 936 weeks from birth to high school graduation. 936 weeks the church has when a child is born to mark them for discipleship and teach them to love Christ. 936 weeks to come alongside in Vacation Bible School, in camps, in Sunday school. 936 weeks. Everybody in here is thinking, well, that's not a lot. There's 937 marbles in here, one because I'm going to give away to a high school senior at the 11:15 service today. But these marbles represent 1 week. And we did this in worship planning this week. And for those who have kids, it was rough. There's 364 weeks from the beginning of middle school to high school graduation. When a child comes out of confirmation and gets ready to start middle school, you have 364 weeks with them before they start moving into the real world. 208 weeks from the beginning of ninth grade to high school graduation. We count our days. We count those weeks. We count those moments in ways that we can pour into our families as the band comes forward, in ways that we can pour into our kids and pour into our students and pour into them in ways that are going to change and transform them and don't want to waste a moment. We want to teach our kids that the word no is a complete sentence. We want to teach our kids, we want to teach our students, we want to teach our families that the ability to understand how to build a calendar and to build a life will impact not only how they experience God, but how the world experiences them. So if you want to take a marble, as we did this last song, if you want to take a marble with you to help you remember, we'll be setting this on my desk because it sits in front of me every week to remind me, don't waste a day with these kids. Don't waste a day with these families. Make sure that we're pouring into them to help them come along because the world will not do it. And this is not a lesson that we get naturally. We have to teach. We have to dig in. We have to focus. You know, my brother Drew, who, and by no stretch of the imagination, was like Jesus. Loving, but he was not perfect. But you know what he gave me always? He'd give me that third shot. He'd give me that extra shot, no matter what, or the fourth, or the fifth, or the sixth, even though that I was that annoying little brother. And that third shot, nothing but net. I still didn't have him do my chores. It's not like I go to Mother and say, he lost the bet, he should have done it. But you know, God's the same way. No matter how many weeks you may have wasted, no matter how many weeks you may have lost, no matter how many years you may have lost, God still gives us that second, third, and fourth, and fifth chance. If you're sitting here this morning and you're struggling, if you're sitting here this morning and you're thinking of all the time lost, come grab you a marble. Or do it from your seat or whatever you do. But that prayer that everybody loved, that words that everybody loved, that no matter how far that child goes, he cannot escape the love of Christ, it's for you too, brothers and sisters. No matter how far apart from God that you feel right now, you can never escape the love of Christ. you can never escape the love of God. This morning, receive it. Be changed and transformed by it in a way that measures and counts your steps. Amen?
If this message challenged or inspired you today, please subscribe to catch future sermons from here at Roswell United Methodist Church in Roswell, Georgia. Thanks for watching.